So my aim is to show you how to texture something that looks like metal. This is aluminium brushed, and it's also got some white residue on the top. So this is a photo-based texture, but I'm also going to show you some procedural textures. So I'm going to start completely from scratch, going File, New, General, and then go Save, because I'm happy with that one. The textures that I'm using, I have purchased legally from polygon.com. There are free websites that you can get textures from. I just find that this professional website gives me really good quality stuff. So use whatever you like, free. There are some free ones here, but use what you like. Okay, so I'm going to start by deleting the cube, and I'm going to insert a UV sphere, and then I'm going to squash it in the Z-axis, SZ, and then look from the side, delete the bottom because I don't really need that. Just going to wireframe, edit, and then box select most of that, and delete those vertices. So essentially I've now got a rounded sort of a shape. Looks a little bit strange in the middle there. It'll probably be okay though. Z back to solid view. Now I'm going to add in one modifier, just subdivision surface. Part of that is otherwise it looks a little bit too square. So if I go to rendered mode, doesn't show much, it's got one plain light. If I look in material preview mode, that's usually a pretty good place to start. I'll increase the subdivisions just a wee bit. Now I'm going to start with the materials, and what we can do is if we go to UV editing, you'll see that this doesn't have any shape that matches that. So if I highlight the entire thing, you'll see all of these shapes completely don't match that circular shape. So with my mouse on the right hand side, I'm going to push U for unwrap, and then just choose the lazy option, Smart UV Project. And then you can put in a little gap in between those. I would recommend it for your projects, but for this demonstration purposes, I've now found that split into pieces. I'm not happy with how that is split into pieces, so I'm going to look from the top, and I'm going to do it again. Push U, and instead of choosing Smart UV Project, I'm going to choose Project from View. So now I've got something of what it would look like from the front, but I do have a whole lot of wasted space around the outside here. So if I, over on this menu, push A, S for scale, and then bring it out to the edges. So I'm using as much of that picture space as I can. As I mentioned earlier, I was planning to show you some procedural texturing first. So let's start there with this little icon down here, Material Properties. I'm just going to go into Texture Paint. So over here it's going, what texture? And it's giving me this funny purple. But if I click this one, actually shading is what I wanted to do. Excuse me, shading. This lighting system is what these reflection you can see on that, that metal sphere, and the background's all looking quite blurry. So I'm going to make a new material slot. You can see there's nothing there. I could either hit that new button or this new button. I can make the entire thing the base color red, so if I do that, hey presto, I've got something red. If I want to make it metallic, drag it over to metallic, and then change the roughness down. So that looks like anodized metal. If I zoom right in, you'll sort of see a few squares still. So I can right click and choose Shade Smooth, and that can help, but generally increasing the subdivisions will make it really, really smooth. So that can be done. Other things that might be important, so if we look at this material 1, I'm going to double click and just call this red metal. Now if I wanted to make some other part a different color, then I could perhaps highlight this entire section through the middle here. I'm using circle select at the moment. Now I want to make that part a different color, so I'm going to make a new material, and again I'm just going to hit this plus button. I've got this new material slot, there's nothing in it. I can either make it completely from scratch or base it off of one I've made already. So I'll just make this one completely from scratch. Let's say I painted it, and maybe on here I want to paint yellow. It's not going to be metallic. and the roughness, maybe I'm going to have high gloss paint, something like that. But then you might ask yourself, why hasn't that changed to yellow? The reason is I have not clicked assign. So if I click assign, now that part is now yellow. So if I go to tab into edit mode, I can see reflections across the top here. If I'm unhappy with how rough or glossy that is, I can change the roughness down and I get more and more reflections. So I can put in different colors, and this is what I would call procedural texturing, because none of this involves any photos at this point in time. So I'll just rename that one yellow. So the next one that I'm going to do, I'm going to use the exact same shape, make a new slot, and this one is going to be, rather than material .001, this one's going to be called Aluminium. And I'm going to click on that object, highlight the entire thing, and then click assign. So now it's got this base color that's white. I'm going to make this window as big as I can, and I'm going to start putting in a whole bunch of boxes that are going to connect to the photos. So I typically go Shift A, search, because I can't be bothered finding it. It is something I can find, but I'm not going to go looking for it. And I type image texture. IMG is usually enough, and I push return or enter. And this box is where I can open up image textures. So I'm going to start by going open, and then in my year 11 folder, because that's you guys that I'm teaching to, texturing demonstration, and here are my textures. So I've downloaded all of my textures, and what I'm going to start with is metal aluminium, and in here I've got previews. I could look at the previews. It's not really what I'm after, but essentially that's what it looks like on a cube or on a sphere, but the plain picture itself just looks like that. That's boring as anything. The reason why metal looks interesting on a 3D model is because of what it's reflecting. So if we look at that, it's all the lights in what looks like a warehouse that makes it look interesting. So I'm going to go up and then come into this metalness. It's called metalness based on the workflow. 4K and 3K, that's just about the image sizes. And it's empty. That's not very helpful. There we go. So these file names, they have what it is, metal aluminium 001, and then after that it's the type of map. This one here that's got COL, that is the only one that contributes to the color. So I open that image and I can't see the entire file name. So I usually make that wider so I can see the entire file name. That means I can check for mistakes. So I connect color to base color. And I will click assign to make sure that that's actually assigned over there. Now it hasn't really made a lot of difference because remember that image is kind of boring. It's the only one that's contributing to color, so this color space S for standard RGB red, green, blue. I'm going to now copy this one. I highlight it, Shift D, bring it down. The reason I do that is it means it's going to open in the same place I was looking before. The file that I'm after next is I can't remember if it's the roughness or the metalness. I think it's the metalness. So metalness map, metalness workflow. That's why it says metalness twice. And this is not contributing to color, so I go non-color. And I'm going to plug that into the metallic. So there we can see it's starting to look shiny. I can draw a box around all of that and then G for grab and move it up out of the way. I'm going to duplicate that one. One weird thing that it does though, it doesn't always keep non-color there. So the next one is roughness. I'll click the folder, it's going to go to where I was before. Blender uses a roughness workflow, others use a gloss, but in this case it's roughness into roughness, so there's no need to convert it. So there we go. That's all the data, non-color, that contributes to how shiny it is. So that's the kind of the general appearance of aluminium. It's silver grey. It's got a few brush marks on it. If you zoom in right there, you can see some brush marks on the aluminium. But at the moment it looks perfect. And there is no such thing as a perfect surface. There's one last thing that makes a really big difference, and that's a normal map. So I'm going to go Shift D, duplicate that one. And you'll see it's duplicated, it's got a number 2 there. I'm going to open the normal map. So that's labeled NRM, and there are 2 versions. There's one, this one's 1.8 megabytes, and the other one's 26.9. To save on memory, I'm going to click on the smallest one. There's honestly hardly any difference between the 2, so just go for the small one. I can't plug color straight into normal, I have to put a normal map in between. Shift A, go search, type normal, and I choose normal map, and I drop that there. So I go color into color, and I go normal into normal. Wait for it to do a little bit of calculation. And so some of these bumps and scratches, I can increase their strength. I can also decrease them. It does pop them around. So you can kind of see a little dent there, if that's what you're after for surface imperfections, and it sort of creates a little bit extra going on. But generally, leaving it at about 1 is okay. What you can do is just do some tests, maybe 0.5, 1, 2, 3, 4, depends on the sort of material that you're using. But I'll zoom out and then show all of those. So essentially we've got our default principled BSDF shader. We have metal aluminium color, metalness workflow, that's the only color one, plugged into the base color. The next one is the metalness workflow, it's non-color and that's plugged into metallic. You'll notice that the sliders there have disappeared. The next one is the roughness, and that's plugged into roughness. And then the last one is the NRM, that means the normal map, and I just need to change that to non-color. And then the strength you can make adjustments to, so that may make some better looks there if I make some adjustments to this strength. And you can kind of see the brush marks got a whole lot stronger with that normal map. So that can be particularly useful. Depends what sort of thing you're trying to design. The other thing I said I was going to do was to put on surface imperfections. So these surface imperfections are going to affect the roughness more than anything else, so I'm just shift clicking these, G for grab, bring them down. I like to keep things in a nice row, and I'll G for grab, bring them up there. So I've got a nice space there. I'm going to click one, Shift D, drop that down. So I'm now going to click open, go up a folder or 2, and in this case I might try something slightly different. Rather than wiping residue, I might have a look at scratches mixed. Let's have a look at the previews and thumbnail. Essentially these scratches could be added to a surface, and the normal map, that's the data. If you looked at it as a photo, that's the strange purple color that it is. So it's got a normal map, so I could mix that in, but I'm just going to do the black and white mixing because that'll work just fine. So in here, wait for it to download from OneDrive. There we go. So I'm going to use this one here. They're basically black and white reverses of each other, so you may have to do some inverting. Now if I plug this one straight into there, into the roughness, the other one will disappear. That's no good. So I need to mix these. So if I click Shift A, type mix, and I'm going to choose mix RGB. So that's mixing the colors. I'm going to mix those two together, and rather than using mix, I'll click with the word mix and choose overlay. So essentially we're overlaying one on top of the other. Now that looks extremely shiny. Way too shiny. So the next part that I want to show is I may have it already switched on, but I'm going to edit my preferences, and there's a plugin called Node Wrangler, and I type NODE, and I've already ticked the box. So essentially you just have to make sure that's ticked like that, and then close. So if I hold down Control and Shift and click that one, you'll see what the scratches would look like. If I hit Control Shift and click that one, you'll see what that roughness is contributing to. And part of my problem is I still had sRGB. That needs to be non-color data. If I Shift Control click that one, it's showing what both of them look together, and I can adjust the factor. I should be able to. Did I click the right buttons? What's that line going to? Shift click that. Alright, I can see some image stuff there, but the roughness is being affected too much by one or the other. So I can change overlay in my practice before. I might just change to the one that I practiced with. So rather than using the scratches, I will choose the smears, I think it was, wiping residue. I think that's how I had it. One over the top, wiping residue at the top, and non-color data. That's still very, 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 very reflective. Okay, so I'm going to change from material preview to rendered view, and you can see some of it, but it's in a grey world, so it looks particularly boring. So I'm going to change from object to the world, and I'm going to put in one of those HDRs that I was talking about. So I go Shift A, search environmental texture, ENV, environment texture, and drop it in there. I'm going to connect this to this, and you'll see a warning. What color? Because I've got nothing connected. I'm going to click open. I'll go to recents and then up a bit. So one more. So I could use this one here, regular 3K, and I'll choose that one, open image. So you'll see it's got some rim lights. Other ones that I've also just demonstrated was, I think was star field. So I'll have a look for star field. HDR, hate that list view. Rim light, 3-point, fluorescent. Some of them are pretty crazy, like this loop one. And then I'll connect it. So it's got some crazy looking loops and swirls and stuff. If we go back to the object, then I can change the factor of how much is each part contributing to it. It's looking very black because why? It's in a black world. So if we are in our world, we could put in a completely different world that's got real lighting, like skies and stuff like that. The one that I was looking for, Starfield, let's go back to that one. I actually kind of liked it. Fluorescent, loops, Starfield, regular, 3K, and then connect that one in. So it looked kind of cool. You've got stars at the top, reflection off the ground at the bottom. You can see the swirls. I think those swirls are a little too strong, so I go back to the object and I change the factor. Alright, if I turn it mostly up that way, then I get hardly any roughness from that. It's very, very shiny. But in the dark, what's shiny metal going to look like? Dark. Right. So, fairly complex sort of stuff until you've practiced it a lot. But this is what we'd call a node tree. And I would expect that at the end of your project that you show what you did. So you'd be taking a screenshot. Take your screenshot like that, And then in here you could write about it. You could put, say, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and say what they are doing and what they are contributing to your color, and how you made your the surface coloring on your wheel. Okay, so I hope that's enough. It is pretty complex, but it's just going to take you a bit of practice.